Hello, I'm David. This is Gemma. And this is Creative Differences. Indie House. Hello, Gemma.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay, thanks. Not bad. How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Are you having a
Struggling a lot.
Yeah, you're having a lovely day.
It is a nice day today, and we've had a nice couple of days of nice weather, so that always perks me up.
I've had some spring. Enjoy
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's all we're going to get.
I'm an avid gardener, so I've been planting tons of edibles. And,
I see edibles.
No, not like that. I like growing my own vegetables, so I really love summer because I get to grow all my own salad leaves and tomato.
Are you able
cucumbers.
to store them for later in the year, or is it?
They don't last long.
No.
I don't have a big garden. I've only got a small little sort of walled-in courtyard garden, so everything's in pots, and I can't fit any more pots in my garden without overloading it to a ridiculous degree where the dogs won't have anywhere to run around.
Oh, bless them.
So I've got basically I try to cram as much stuff into the pots I've got as I possibly can. And last year was pretty good. Got quite a lot of food out of it. And the year before was even better. So just have to see how it goes this year.
Well, good luck. What sort of things is it, like lettuce and cucumber and normal stuff?
I do I grow that stuff because that grows pretty well. But I also grow like green beans and broccoli. I've got loads of not loads. I've got a handful of little fruit trees. Like they're like patio trees, really.
Okay.
They're quite. But I've got like peaches and plums and pears and all sorts of things. Cherries. They're lovely.
Nice. So you can have a proper little fruit and not, what's the word? General salad, all in one bowl.
And I grow courgettes pretty well, actually. They're good. I really like my own courgettes taste better, and my own lettuce leaves taste better. Those are the things I think are markedly different from the shops.
Yeah, I've heard that people have said that their own produce tastes better. I don't know if it's because of they've put the labour into it, so it tastes better in the head, or whether it's because of it's because it isn't sort of factory produced, if you like.
This combination of both of those, I would agree. Yeah, I think psychosomatically you think it tastes better because you put all this work in, but at the same time, you're controlling things like nutrients and. You're tending to this garden and looking after it. And like, as you say, there is a kind of, you do lose something in mass production.
Yeah. And because they have to produce so much so quickly, they put things in that shouldn't
Another
necessarily
thing that's
be
massively different. Strawberries, hugely different if you grow your own. If you fertilize them right and feed them properly, they are so delicious.
Okay.
So, yeah. And they're so easy to grow. And I never do them from seed. I always buy myself a couple of little pots because they're cheap as anything. It's like £1.50 for a plant, and I always get two. But yeah, strawberries are absolutely delicious if you grow your own.
Okay. I shall look forward to receiving some, Gemma.
It wouldn't last the journey. That's the other thing. Everything's much softer and sweeter. And
don't. Yeah. Right, so you are an actress. Right. Sorry. First of all, do you prefer actress or actor?
Actor, I suppose.
Cool. Awesome.
I'm not overly fussy about it. I don't get offended. I suppose if I had to choose actor. Yeah.
That's cool. No, because I know some prefer some lady actors prefer actor and some prefer actress, and they sometimes can get a little bit. This is what I am. Call me by what I am. Is that all right? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess I've always been of the mindset from the youngest age that I just want everything to be equal. Like I know that men and women are different, and I'm not saying equality has to mean that we all do exactly the same things all the time. But I think when it comes to something like a job title, I don't see the harm in it being across the board the same for everyone. I think that unifies and equalizes us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't get doctoresses, do you? And
No, exactly.
dentist dresses. So you're an actor, writer, producer, and workshop leader. Is that right? Anything else? Any other strings to this bow?
I have done a handful of workshops over the years. When I first graduated from uni, I was teaching, and then I did a couple of like summer clubs, and then I did a handful of my own classes. But it's never been a kind of priority of mine. It's been something that's come along, and I've enjoyed it when I've done it, but I don't actively really go looking for an awful lot of that kind of work. But that might change, because now that I'm teaching script editing and script writing and things like that, I feel a lot more engaged with it than I did just general kind of drama, which is what these classes tended to be. And I've got to a point in my life, I think, where I kind of want to be a bit more of a homebody than I used to be. And I've always been one anyway, but I guess I'm kind of resigned to this now. And I really like the idea of working from home. And, the teaching I've delivered this last week has been remote for obvious reasons. But I don't see why that needs to not be a thing. Like, that could continue being a thing forthwith, rather than having to settle for, well, I say settle, I don't mean that in a negative way, but rather than having to just look at the pool of people who are in your location, when it's teaching things like a one-off masterclass or something like that, I don't see the harm in that being remote learning at all.
Is it something you could start doing on one of the educational, you've got these websites. If I name one, I've got to name them all. Okay, Skillshare, Udemy, Masterclass.
If a reputable place, like I think is it Skillset?
There's Skill. That's one. It might be. I use Skillshare myself for.
I'm thinking of the one run by Gareth Ellis Unwin.
Okay.
Unwin Ellis.
Okay.
I said that. Sorry, Gareth, I've said that the wrong way around. I know he's running one of these, and I see a name like his, and I think, well, I would trust that. That's going to be legit. The problem with some of the online stuff is that you don't really know who you're dealing with, and I've worked with people or been taught by people who've advised me against certain places, and I can't name names for obvious reasons, but in private, we all discuss who the best places to go to and where to avoid. And I think that's the best thing you can do is network, talk to people who've done it.
Yeah.
But, where I was teaching was kind of a college, it's a further education facility, and it's a college and a university. And I had college students and uni students on different days. And I enjoyed that, because I think that when you come into a place of learning like that, you get the opportunity to be that breath of fresh air. You get to be that outsider with the objectivity who can give constructive criticism and positive feedback. And unfortunately, sometimes it can mean more from people like us, because we're not in their faces every day telling them to get their essay in on time and stuff like that. The people who do the slog work, like my partner, they deserve all the credit, but sometimes it's our perspective that they go, oh, okay, maybe you're right. I'm not going to be mollycoddled in the industry the way I will be in a place of learning.
Yeah,
it's a big learning curve when you leave further education and go into the industry.
Yeah.
Because very few places prepare you for the reality of the business. There's a lot of idealism that gets taught in theatre and performing arts and things like that, and I think idealism is a wonderful place in a learning facility, because we're better to exercise these ideas, but it doesn't prepare you for the real world.
I suppose having if the course has a period of it where you're actually in the workplace, like a work placement sort of thing, you'll get to experience that harsh reality of you do have to get up early, you do have late nights, sometimes you may not sleep because you've got a big shoot tomorrow, or a big a get in and things have gone wrong, something's not arrived, and half the
especially if you're in charge of it. Like, it's stressful enough just coming onto set first thing and leaving last thing, and then getting up in the morning again to do it all again as an actor. But I've been there as like the writer producer as well, not always successfully, I might add. So I don't really consider myself to be a producer. You know, I don't look for producing opportunities. They've fallen on my lap occasionally, and I've tried to help productions get made, but that's not really the same thing.
Okay.
Producer is quite a loose term. I guess I'm someone who helps get things done, and if that's what a producer is, then I'm maybe an assistant producer is a fair term, something like that. But yeah, if you're in that position, I was in that position once just for myself, and it wasn't a project that went particularly well, but it taught me a lot, because sometimes the failures teach you more.
Yes,
but yeah, being that, if you are that person, then you come back from the shoot when normally as an actor, you know, you chill out for a bit, watch TV, go to bed, you know, self-care. But you're that person, then you've got to make sure the timesheets are right for the next day, the call sheets have gone out, that you know what scenes are being shot the next day, and then someone calls in sick or something goes wrong and you have to reschedule all of it, and you've got to do this all before the 6 a.m. call time the next day, which means you're lucky to get 1 or 2 hours sleep, and that can go for weeks. And it's exhausting, and it's not actually healthy. Yeah,
no, absolutely.
The reason I fell out of love with it. It's not a healthy.
As well as preparing stuff for tomorrow, you're also preparing stuff for like next week or something. Making sure the insurance, you know, you're making sure that if you're filming, we did a film together. I think you were you're down as producer for that one.
As assistant producer for that one.
And they smashed the car up. One of the actors, his character had to jump on top of the car and smash it with a baseball bat. That would have taken a lot of preparation.
That's a one take.
Yeah, absolutely. But you've also got to make sure that the police are aware, because you know you don't want people phoning. So I think was there a police on set on that day? Do you remember?
There probably was, because they probably did the sensible thing.
Yeah.
But I remember the first film I was ever in was called Jesus versus the Messiah, and they won't mind me sharing this story because we've talked about it a lot. But during the filming of a fight scene between the two male leads, Simon Phillips and Danny Idola, someone was watching through a window in like an office block and hadn't seen the camera at all. They just seen these two guys going at each other, throwing themselves and each other in puddles and punching each other. And they called the police, and the police arrived. And it was like, it was so annoying. I wasn't there that day. I wasn't on set but it was really funny, and they talked about it constantly, and it was just one.
Watch reconstruction stories.
Yeah, I've done one actually.
I've done one as well. Hey, we're in
I think
the
it was
club.
Crime Watch. It was reconstruction. I don't know if it was Crime Watch. I think it was for the Crime and Investigation channel. They were doing like a documentary thing, but it was very similar to that. It was a crime reconstruction.
Yeah. The one I was told about was Crime Watch, and they were reconstructing a mugging. So the old lady actress is walking down the road. Old lady actor, sorry, is walking down the road, and the mugger actor runs up behind her, nicks her bag, runs around the corner, and the camera crew told him, when you get round the corner, just wait round the corner, because obviously you're out of shot. And when they do these reconstructions, the camera crew tend to be, you know, they go for like super wide angles sometimes, don't they? They're like quite far away. When they were doing this, apparently a passerby, because they don't close the streets because they want, you know, if it's busy, they need it to be busy, and BBC won't spend money on extras if they don't need to. So this guy, they did the scene. The mugger guy took the handbag, ran around the corner and stopped, waited around the corner. A passerby saw this, you know what's coming. He ran after the actor, the mugger actor, got round the corner because the guy stopped. He's got him up against the wall, punched him in the face, broke his nose. No. And the thing is, while he's chasing after the mugger, the camera crew have cottoned on to what's going on. So you've got some of the camera crew are following. The crew are chasing after the bloke who's chasing after the actor. And I just think of Benny Hill, you know. And but yeah. So that sort of stuff does happen. People, but I mean, I suppose it shows what great actors are. Incidentally, the film we were talking about earlier with the smashing car thing is called Breathe. If you want to have a look, from Porcelain Film. There's no reason not to mention it, is there? Really?
Nope. Directed by Nick Winter.
Absolutely brilliant, brilliant director, brilliant writer. A real Nick is brilliant with actors. You know, he lets the actor play to their strengths, and he lets you, if he trusts you, he lets you improvise as well, which is awesome. I love that. Have you ever considered directing?
I have done it.
Okay.
And I studied it. I studied it at university. I did 2 modules. So I did directing and then further directing or advanced directing, whatever it was. And then I directed a couple of cabaret shows straight after uni, and I directed a show called The Maids that we put that on at the Etc. Theatre. And then a huge jump, many years later, I did a short film with Edwina Lee and Nigel Pivaro.
Okay.
And I directed that. And that was kind of half written, half improvised.
So
you know.
That was an experience then.
Yeah. That was just something I fancied doing. It was just, I just had this idea. I think it was called Double Take. I'm sure it was called Double Take. And it was basically about a father and a daughter a cappella duo.
Okay.
And it was just a slice of life. It was just an insight into their little world. There was no big drama, nothing happened, but it was just a slice of life. And they were beautiful together. They were really cute together. And Edwina Lee is one of my favourite actors. She's absolutely brilliant. And I happened to be friends with Nigel at the time. And I'd done a couple of favours for a friend of his, media-wise, a couple of promo jobs for him. And he was like, "Oh, I owe you one." So he did this film with me, and it was such a lovely experience.
Wow.
And it was nice to get to direct someone, who had so much acting experience as well. He, it was quite surreal being listened to. I had the idea that he would interject.
Yeah, I was going to say, did he ever?
Almost. No, he didn't. He never did it. He was really respectful, and I really appreciated it.
So when you say it was semi-improvised, half scripted, half improvised, was that a case of the whole thing is scripted and then you film the scene and then say do it when you're happy with it, do it again? No,
I didn't want to do that, because if you do that, then some scenes are better improvised, others are better scripted, but they don't necessarily fit together. Like it shifts in tone or something right there. So basically what I did was I wrote the outline for the script initially, and then we rehearsed some of it, and we nailed down some of the lines that we wanted to keep, and we used them as kind of like bullet points of where to get to the theme. So that's how we did it.
That's cool. That's interesting, because the thick of it is that apparently they have the script and they film it as scripted, and then they say, right, we've got that, now play around with it, and then they chop and change with that. That's
it might be different when you're doing something like a series. You get to know your characters in a lot more depth. This is a short film, that was like under 10 minutes long, and I've done that that process that you've just said. I've done that in short films before, and I just don't think that you have enough time with the characters or enough material to be able to do that in the same way as you would with something like The Thick of It, which was much more long standing. Yeah,
absolutely. And they probably had longer shoot days as well, and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they would probably had so many multiple takes that they would have been able to chop and put it together.
Absolutely.
But plus, not to sort of negate the work that we did, but there's a massive difference between, it was me and 2 other girls making it, and it was the first short film I'd ever directed. It was the first short film I'd written that was supposed to be half improvised, and these girls, I think it was early on in their careers as well. I don't think they'd done more than 1 or 2 things. So there's also, I have to say, a big difference between a camera, a cast and crew that work together over a longer period of time and have worked over a longer period of time. The more you do it, the better you get at all this, because it's quite intuitive. And it's a lot to ask for in the very, very early stages of someone's career.
No, absolutely. But it also shows how much you trusted your actors to know that they could deliver that. That's a massive plus, just to say, there you go.
Well, Edwina's one of my closest friends now, and like I said, she's just brilliant. I go, like you say, when you kind of work well with someone that way, you can just go, oh, I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
I can literally give her stuff, and I know she'll deliver it bang on every time, and she did. And Nigel's an old pro anyway, so I never thought for a second I'd have to worry about him. In fact, the only person I worried about was myself when I had a small scene in it, and I felt like I'd actually let the show down a little bit because I felt like I was too energetic and too perky, and it kind of punctuated the nice, I don't know,
the mellowness.
Yeah, the mellowness, but maybe it needed it. I don't know. It's hard. I can't be objective about my own performances.
Yeah, I've been told off. I'm hyper critical all the time of my own stuff. Did you always want to be in the business?
Yes.
Cool. Do you remember the moment when you were like, "That's what I want to do"?
I don't remember it. My parents remember it.
Okay.
Apparently, I was playing a poppy in the Wizard. A poppy in the Wizard of Oz when I was in. I don't know. I went to kindergarten because I grew up abroad, and I don't know what you call it. Nursery, I suppose you call it here.
Play school,
yeah, play school probably, yeah. And apparently from then on, I was just obsessed with performing and, wanting to watch theatre and film and stuff like that. Very, very young age. I don't remember it. They remember it. And they've told me many, many, many times the story.
The poppy story.
I briefly flirted with the idea of being a vet because I love animals, but I am not equipped to deal with
the negative side. Yeah.
I think it would have broken my heart too much.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you write your memoirs, there should be called something like it started with a seed or something like that. Little Poppy Gemma.
Well, I can't put Poppy because of the connotations of heroin. I wouldn't want someone to misunderstand.
I owe it all to a poppy.
Yeah, to a poppy.
So that's how did you get started in the business, like professionally?
Okay, so I remember being at uni, and I think I was in the second year when I started applying for short films and bits and pieces, and I got royally told off by my tutors, who were basically like, "You're not ready. We haven't finished molding you yet." And I was like, "Oh." I was like, but these are like student films and stuff. And they were like, no, which you're not ready yet. I was like, I regret to this day listening to that advice because they were still, I don't think they quite understood that what I was trying to do was get experience by working with other students and things like that. But they really put me off the idea. So I started much later than I wanted to, but I still was the first person from my year group to put on a show of my own, which was The Maids. I mean, I'd done cabaret. Well, technically, but the cabaret was strange. I was working, your uni job. I was working in a gym, but it was also a dance studio, and it was called The Factory, and it was based in Finsbury Park. And we used to get some of the Strictly Come Dancing lot used to train there and stuff. So it was a nice little job to have for a thesp. And I've forgotten my point completely. This is what lockdown started to do to me. Like I go off on a tangent, and I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
That's right. You were talking about how you got started. Your uni lecturer didn't like you doing student films, and they were moulding you.
Yeah, I've utterly forgotten my point. Other than I wish I'd started to do those student films and ignored that advice back when I was still at uni, because ultimately I didn't start doing that until I'd graduated. My point was that I was working at this place called The Factory, and this woman called Helen Parry, she rang in and she asked if we could provide her with rehearsal space because she was doing this cabaret. And I really don't remember how it happened, but we ended up being on the phone for quite some time. And by the end of that conversation, she'd roped me into producing this cabaret thing for her, to helping her direct it if I could bring in a ton of students from my course, which wouldn't say I brought in a ton, but I did bring in a few. And suddenly her little cabaret went from really being just her to her with this kind of like little troupe of actors behind her. And that was fun. That was really nice because it was basically like political satire. She was a bit like Weird Al Yankovic, you know, changing existing songs and and changing the meaning of them, and you know, turning them into jokes and stories and things. And it was pretty good. And I enjoyed it. But yeah, then I did The Maids at the Etc. Theatre in Camden. And I wish I'd had the guts to just kind of keep doing that. I think I got a bit gun shy after like maybe one bad review, which is really silly when, you know, you need to develop a thicker skin. But I'd also worked through that. I'd worked on that play a lot during my time at uni. And I think by the time I'd put on what I'd envisaged as my professional version, I think I was done with it. And I think I just needed a new project.
Right. You just got a little bit tired.
Yeah, and when Jesus versus the Messiah came along, and then I realised that my real love wasn't theatre at all. Theatre was great.
Yeah.
And when I watched live theatre, I always went, oh, you know, I want to be on the stage. I want to be part of that chorus, jumping around and dancing and singing. But ultimately, my great love is for film and television. And after I did JVM, I realised that's what I really wanted to do. And I moved away from theatre and started focusing on that. And I did tons of shorts and student films and bits and pieces here and there. But it never really took off for me, if I'm honest.
Right. Is it something you might revisit?
It's so weird. I want to. Like, I really want to. There's that pull that brings you in the first place has never left me.
Yeah.
Never. I know it won't. It's faded at times when I've been a bit jaded by the whole thing, but it's never disappeared, and I know it never will. Right now, things are different, not just because of Corona, but because my partner's had faced cancer this year, so we've been fighting that.
Is he all right?
He is. Cool. He's doing very well. The treatment seems to have worked. We're still waiting all clear, but no, everything's gone as we'd hoped.
Perfect.
So we're very, very fortunate.
Wish him well for me.
I will. Thank you. But I've also had a couple of diagnoses myself this last year or two that have meant I've been put on certain medications and things like that, which have affected my memory. Right. As you can see from me losing track now. And unfortunately, I've put on a little bit of weight. Now, the weight shouldn't be an issue. And I know that, you know, there'll be tons of people out there going, don't let that stop you. And I would say that to anyone else. But for me, I just don't feel quite right in my own skin right now. And I think that combined with the inability to actually learn lines and trust myself to learn lines has made me go, I'm not quite ready for that yet. Right. But hopefully when I get better, I will be.
Is it a confidence thing, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's there too. It's all, you know, it's like a milkshake of problems.
Because I know we've known each other for a long time, and ahead of this, I had a look at your IMDb thing, and you've got a trailer on there. I can't remember what it's for, but it's a film, and it was going along, and then you came on the screen. I'm not just saying this because you're here, but you just lifted when you start. You know, your performance just lifted the thing, and it was just so natural and real. And Jem, you've got to get back out there.
I wish I knew what you were talking about. I think you're talking about something called Amnesiac.
It might be. I'll have a quick look now.
That was a film that I had trouble with, like, in a way. Like, I enjoyed doing the filming, and they were really open to me, you know, developing my character with them. Sorry. And I got to work with Edwina Lee again, and Leon Florence, who's one of my favorite actors to work with. And the three of us together had a blast making that. But it turned out that we were only in like half the film. Right. The guys made it, they sort of rewrote it during this process, and they brought back a couple of other characters that they thought, oh, actors, an actor that I think that they thought they'd lost. And I think she got a bit of FOMO. You know, I think she turned down the part that I ended up taking and then saw the three of us, me, Eddie, and Leon, having a good time. And I think she went, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Because I remember her asking me how it was going. And she asked me in that kind of way where, how's that going? Right. I was like, really well. I was like, we're doing really well. Like, we're really enjoying it. And instantly, like that, her facial expression just changed. Like, oh. And I was glad that they brought her back because she's a really good actress. But it kind of, they changed the story. Right. I was asked to be a producer on that. And I did kind of pull out my best producer guns at that time. So I invested in it a lot, and I wanted to be part of the editing process because I wanted to make sure that the story was coherent, and they wouldn't let me. And then the story wasn't coherent. Right. It did get distributed like in a small way and stuff like that. And I don't regret my decision to do it at all because I don't regret anything. Everything is a learning curve. But I really do regret them not allowing me to be more involved. But if they, you know, I do have a producer credit, an actual, not an assistant, but a proper producer credit for that. And I was more than willing to follow through on what that meant. Yeah. And I wanted to. And it was like, I couldn't, they wouldn't let me back in, you know, once the filming was over, and they'd obviously changed their mind about what they wanted to do. But fortunately, that led to the film not doing as well as I'd hoped.
Right. It was Amnesiac.
It was. Okay.
No, that's totally welcome. It was. I was watching it. I thought, okay, listen, and then your performance just it lifted it. So well done. Get back on the horse, Gemma Deerfield. Get back on the horse.
I'm lucky. My has kind of made some overtures that she might be willing to take me back when I'm ready, and if that's the case, by the time I'm ready, then I would definitely take her up on it because. When I left the industry for a bit, I took a break to be a chef, which was great, and I loved it. But I didn't leave. I wasn't leaving the people I worked with. I was taking a break for myself. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to lose my agent and things like that. Yeah. But I had to be honest and say I can't be your client right now for my own reasons. And she's always been massively supportive of me. Awesome. Massively. She's wonderful.
Fantastic. How was the chefing going? Just on the sideline.
Well, I went from a kitchen porter to a head chef within 5 years. So, wow. I did work hard, and I loved it. I was passionate about it. When Corona came and I lost my job, I was just starting to develop some very early signs of arthritis in my fingers, right. Which, the endless chopping, it was starting to become a bit of an issue. So I don't know whether I can actually go back to that when lockdown is over, even if it's just part-time. I'm not sure if I'm well enough for it, but I'm really hoping that the script reading and the editing and stuff, that will take off instead, because I think I go through phases. I'm always passionate about what I do, but that passion doesn't completely go. I just kind of feel I outgrow stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it just sort of subdues a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know whether it makes me flaky or what, but I just feel like I got to as far as I was going to get with that.
No, it makes you interesting, because you're taking on all these different experiences and learning these, and then you might be inspired to do a short film about a chef, and you can incorporate all of that stuff into that.
I know what you mean, and you know what I've had to really analyze myself this year. And one of the things that I've come to realize is that as much as I think acting was the first thing, and when I think about the Poppy and how old I was, then it was the first thing, but writing was right on the heels of that, right. When I was 12, I completed my first novel.
Wow.
It was rubbish. It was terrible.
But you did it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was. How I describe it to everyone is it was dog shit, and it was. But it was like, do you remember those Point horror books?
Yes.
Yeah. I was mad into them at the time, and I basically wrote my own, and it was awful. But that want to write was obviously there. Yeah. Every day that I wrote, I was getting A's, A+, and I would spend 10 to 20 minutes on each one, like not hours. I could just, it came out of me. Like so naturally. And my English teacher could see that, and he really supported me. And I think by the time I was 14, I'd written my first play. And it was complicated. It was too complicated. My ideas, especially when I was younger, were way too big for my ability.
Okay.
That's where I started falling short with the writing stuff. But no, that's always been there. And I think you're right. I think one of the reasons why in real life I churn through these experiences is I think what I'm ultimately doing is banking my ideas for my writing.
Yes.
And I think I've always been doing that.
What about a film about someone who's about to be evicted from their house, has got to find the money to pay for it, or they've lost their job or something, so they grow their own veg and start a restaurant in their home, and they make enough money to save their house?
I have that.
It's yours. Run with it.
I wouldn't necessarily do it from the house, but it would be a very good way to do a pop-up thing. Like these pop-up restaurants have become a thing.
Yeah. They grow all their own fruit and veg, so you've got experience of doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I'd probably give the character a significantly bigger garden than me, but yeah, that's a nice idea. That to me, that suggests, there's a story arc there to go with. That also suggests a nice slice of life example. Again, I like those kind of things. I know, I've written all sorts of genres. I've written horrors and thrillers and all sorts. But I think what I'm ultimately always doing, regardless of the genre I'm in, is I'm massively focused on character.
Right.
And so I think I should probably focus on drama more than anything else. That's what I seem to. That's what comes out of me the most. And I think that's why I like these slice of life, shorts and things like that. I like. I like.
That's the title.
Real people.
For the chef thing, a slice of life.
Yeah. It's not. Well, if that comes out, everyone's just going to be going, "That's Dave's idea. He gave it all to you."
When it comes out, I've given it to you. It's yours. It's yours. I'm not doing anything with it. I don't know about chefing or growing veg.
Have you ever seen that film, Julie and Julia?
No.
It's about Julia Childs and
Julia Roberts.
No, Julie is played by Amy. Oh, she's superhero's girlfriend, Amy Adams.
Okay.
Amy Adams.
Okay.
Amy Adams, Meryl Streep.
Right.
Absolutely love that film. It, like as a chef, I get to indulge the food side of it. As an actor, I enjoy the drama of it. And Meryl Streep she's just wonderful as Julia Child. She really is. It's one of my favorite films. But Amy Adams' character has a husband who devours her food.
Okay.
Like, I love this depiction of this husband who can't get enough of his wife's food. And I just love the way he eats and stuff. And if I did like a slice of life, I could use that as my inspiration and cast you as the husband.
Yeah, I'm available, Jem. It's about time. What? Yeah, I'm available. I'm there. I've already signed. If it doesn't happen, I'm going to be very disappointed.
You'll have to come to Cornwall, though.
I'm there, Jem. I am there. Are you still in Cornwall then?
Yeah, I think there's a very good chance we'll be here for life. I don't know.
Do you like it there? Is it nice? I mean, I know it's quiet and,
I haven't adjusted as quickly to it as I would have liked. I left Manchester. I can't even remember what year it was now. It's been that long. 4 years ago, something like that. Chris and I left the house we were renting in Manchester. We'd got a little bit of inheritance money and savings, and we decided to buy a narrowboat because we wanted to get out of the renting cycle. Yep. That was our main focus. And whilst I will not go into this in too much detail, it's sad, traumatizing. Within 6 weeks of being on board, our boat sank, and we lost like a lot of our stuff. Most of which we'd thrown away already to downsize to a narrowboat. So the stuff we had left was the stuff. Wow. We lost a lot of. We ended up having to move in with Chris's lovely mum, who was very kind and really took care of us. and we had to stay there until we could save up enough to be able to get our own place again. We weren't planning on moving here. I got us a little Airbnb Christmas holiday for a week, a couple of years back now, and it was our little present to ourselves for having such a rotten year or so. And the person who we rented the Airbnb off is now a good friend of mine. Her dad is now our actual landlord, and he bought this house just to rent it to us.
Really?
Because he could, and he saw the state we were in and what we'd been through, and he even docked the deposit. He said, "Don't you worry about it," because the house needed quite a lot of work. It wasn't like walk in and it was great. It needed a new kitchen, bathroom, like there's a bit of damp and stuff like that. So he was like, "If you look after this place and help me, get it back to a proper home again," he was like, "forget about the deposit." And that helped us enormously to be able to get in here.
There are good people in the world, you see.
Yeah, really. Like, we don't even know how to thank them. We're so grateful.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Good on him.
Yeah.
Good on him.
Yeah.
Not all heroes wear capes or
no, indeed.
iron suits. With regards to all of the different things that you have, all of the strings to your bow, which one do you prefer? If you had to just do one of them for the rest of forever.
Gun to my head.
Yeah. It's Matrix. The red pill is acting. The blue pill is writing. The green pill.
But it's those two. I could quite happily disregard all the others.
Okay.
My choice would be between acting and writing, and honestly, it would depend on my mood of the day which one that would be. Right now, I'd quite happily say writing, but I know that if you'd have asked me that 5 years ago, it would have been acting, and maybe in 5 years' time, it might be acting again. But where I'm at right now, it would be writing.
I'm doing a lot of writing at the moment, and I miss acting so much. It's even though they're part of the same industry and everything, they're so different.
Like whichever one you're doing, the other one's nipping at your heels, saying, "Do me too." I'm back and be an actor. Yeah, I know what you mean.
The thing with writing is you're creating a world from nothing. Everything on that paper you have invented out of your head, that is there. That is your world. Whereas acting, you're usually, unless you've written it, you're creating bringing someone else's world to life. But that character is yours. So all of the flaws, there are things that you know about the character as the actor that the director and even the writer doesn't know, because you're sort of layering up that character.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun. Acting is just so much fun.
So I've got a question for you then.
Okay.
Which of the two do you think leaves us more exposed? The writer who is creating something from nothing and therefore giving us an insight into their possible psyche, their way of thinking, their experiences and understanding of the world, or the actor who has to shed their own personal issues of the day and explore character and find themselves in that character?
I think the actor, because the writer can always say, "That's not how I wrote it. That's not, that's," whereas the actor is, as an actor, you're fully exposed. You will never be, there is no other job or industry that one person can make themselves so vulnerable in. And I remember there was an interview with, I can't remember who it was, famous British actor from like the 70s and that. He's still working today, I think. But he said the thing with acting is you can walk into a room, you've never met these people before in your life, the other actors. By lunchtime, you're best friends. And then when you finish that project, you may never work together. You won't work together again for 3 years or something. You come back together and you pick up exactly where you left off, because you become so vulnerable around each other. And with writing, you're showing this is out of my head, but to some extent you sanitize it because you want the audience to enjoy it, and you know, you need to make
That's
it
the difference.
appeal.
I think that's the difference between a good writer and a bad writer. A good writer won't sanitize it, because actually it's the sanitization that would actually ruin effectively the story you're trying to tell and the message you're trying to get out.
But doesn't it?
I think that it also depends on what you're writing and the genre of what you're writing. So if you're writing like a psychological thriller / drama, that might be because you've gone through something, and that's a cathartic way of you know, dealing with your trauma from that experience and turning it into something else, you know, turning it into art. And obviously if you're an actor, and you're doing something that you're very comfortable with, then that's going to come off, you know, it's water off a duck's back. But at the same time, you know, you can flip it and go, if you're writing comedy because you're an entertaining and you've got a flair for comedy kind of thing, and going to work for you is like sitting around a desk with other writers and telling jokes, or versus an actor who has a very difficult scene to do, like a rape or you know something horrendous like that, then I guess that's where the grey areas start to come in, and it's really difficult to decide who actually is the most exposed.
When you say about about sanitizing, you see, I think it depends on the project. If it is something that you've experienced, you care passionately about, and you just want to get it out there, you just want people to know what something is like. So say you've suffered from depression, and you just want to, you know, you want people to know you're trying to raise awareness, then you're going to, you know, no holds barred, this is what it is, it's raw, you know, if you don't like it, imagine experiencing it, sort of thing. Whereas if you're making something for family viewing, you're going to say, well, that, you know, that we need to make sure that this appeals to this particular audience. You're not going to be... So
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Heartland is a good example of that. Have you ever seen it? You're probably not.
No.
It's
not a comedy.
It's the world's most gentle drama.
Okay.
It's about a girl who, you know, who is good with horses, and she rescues abandoned and neglected horses and things like that. And it's been going on for 14 seasons. Like, this is a huge thing. It's a Canadian thing. It's one of their longest running shows. And yeah, I would have to say that's probably very heavily sanitized, but I also really enjoy it because I totally tune out to it. I don't have to overly engage with it. You know, if you've had a long day and you just want to watch something a bit mindless, you know, kind of part of my routine, you know, like I'll watch a bit of Heartland and then I'll watch maybe a bit of Family Guy before I go to bed.
Family Guy. Can't go wrong with Family Guy. So what the one that you'd prefer? Basically, it depends what, you know, how you feel, really.
Depends on your mood, and that's, you know, I might want something really challenging and hard hitting, you know, at the weekend when I'm not engaged with other things and I can really focus on something. I can't remember the last thing that I found truly challenging, especially this year where, you know, there's been a lot more free time and a lot more, everything's kind of melded together. Do you know what I mean? And this has been a funny year. It's been a weird year.
It has. The Northwest women in the creative industry. Can we talk about that a little bit?
We can do. There's not an awful lot to talk about, if I'm honest.
Okay.
I set that up, I think it was, I have no idea, 2011, 2012, something around that time. And the first event was really, really good. We had Nicola Schindler come down, we had Lisa Holdsworth there, and loads of other people. And it was like the venue that we had was packed, cram-packed with women. And I thought, this is wonderful. This is, you know, a sign of things to come. But you know, everybody thinks I did Northwest Women on my own. I didn't. I needed help with it, and I brought someone in, and she abandoned me effectively after the first one. I was really surprised that she did, because, you know, we were so excited about how well this first one had gone. And then basically she just wasn't really interested. I don't think, maybe that's not fair. I don't know whether she was just too busy or whether she wasn't interested or whether she had stuff in her personal life. You know, I'm not going to judge her, and I'm certainly going to say that she was doing it, you know, to be nasty or anything like that. There was no maliciousness in it. But ultimately it meant that I had no co-pilot, and I struggled to manage it on my own. I did do the second event, which was like a Q&A with Maxine Peake. And that went quite well. It was much, much smaller, but it was nice because it was intimate, and it meant that everyone who was there actually got to speak to her directly. Right. And I enjoyed doing that as well. But I think I became ill shortly after that, and I found it very mentally taxing to try and go back and do it all by myself. It just seemed like too much. So I basically messaged the group. You know, there was a lot of members of my Facebook group in this group, which I've now said too many times. And I basically said to them, I was like, look, guys, I want there to be tons of events. I want there to be tons of opportunities here. So I'm going to hand this over to all of us. This is a group responsibility now. I want you guys to use this group, share ideas and talk to each other. And if there are events that you want, I think I remember posting out to people like, what do you want from this group? And I sort of tried to assign a couple of assistants and things like that, but it just, for some reason, it just didn't quite take off, and I'm not sure why. The group was very active for a long time, and I know that a lot of people found that group really useful, and people found each other and worked together as a result of that group, but it kind of lost its momentum quite quickly, and I do blame myself for that, predominantly because it was my idea to create in the first place, but I really thought that there was so much excitement for it at the onset. I thought people would be throwing themselves into wanting to help out and set up events and things, but it felt very much like, oh, can you just do it all for us? And we might show up, we might not. And it was too much work for me to manage at the time without a guarantee that people were going to. And also, I'd insisted that everything to do with this group had to be free. Right. I did not want there to be a sudden charge creeping in. I wanted all the events to be free as well.
Did you have to pay the speakers?
No.
Okay, that's cool.
They all came of their own volition. Like I said, that first event, everybody seemed so buzzing to be there, to be part of it. The fact that we got Nicola Schindler, who apparently was very difficult to get, right. As soon as she came, we had hundreds of people sign up coming. Right. Overnight. And then Nicola brought her casting director with her as well. So that meant tons of actresses were suddenly interested as well. So it's a kind of a regret of mine that I didn't see it through more, but I have this tendency to be really hard on myself. And for a very long time, I didn't talk about the fact that I have mental health issues, and they're quite serious. They're not like, I'm not to belittle or to diminish other people's experiences with, kind of generalized depression and anxiety, but I've got borderline personality disorder and complex PTSD. Okay. And they're a lot harder to manage than just. I used to think I just had sort of like generalized depression until I got a proper diagnosis, which happened fairly recently. It's taken a long time. It's taken me over 15 years to get a proper diagnosis of this. And I've been misdiagnosed as having bipolar disorder, which I don't have. So I was going through a lot of that stuff at the same time as this. And I think I just said to myself, like, take something off your plate. And at the time, that's what Northwest Women was. And that's why I said, I'm handing this over to all of you. This belongs to all of us. And that's where it went to. And I am sad about it. And I always think if I hadn't had these conditions, this sounds arrogant. I don't mean it to be, but I feel like I would have been a tour de force without these things holding me back. And they have held me back my entire life. Since I was 15, I started to display my symptoms. And as I've got older, it's kind of got worse. Right. Well, which is a surprise, because I would have thought it would be better.
You say it's held you back. You've achieved a lot, Jem. you are a tour de force. You've done a lot. You wrote a novel when you were 12. You've gone from being a poppy to being a filmmaker. I think you've done all right. Maybe these other things are to keep you in line with the rest of us, to stop you streaming ahead.
I don't know. I would have been fearless. I know I really wanted to go to LA and do the whole, see if I can make it kind of thing. And I'm, not saying I would have made it, but I would have had the energy to at least try to do that. And I never had the energy to try and do that. It was something I wanted so badly for so long. I said to myself, just go out there for 6 months, see if you can do the, pilot season at least once in your life, so that you have that experience. And even if you don't get anything, you can come back to England having had that experience, and it might even that might open opportunities for you. And I wanted to do it so badly. I think I still do, but I just don't have it. I don't have the energy for it right now, because you have to be so on it all the time in LA. It's almost like being at Cannes, but permanently.
Right, okay.
I've been and I went there for a holiday with no intention of networking or meeting anybody. And everywhere I went, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I was meeting directors, and I was being given cards and told, "Oh, will you be in my web series?" And it's like, I'm here on holiday. I'm not here long enough to do any of these things, but thanks. But it made me realize it's just everywhere in LA.
Yeah.
And I was one of those people. Some people hate it. I fell in love with the place. Within 24 hours of being there, I was like, oh, for some reason, this place feels like home, which it isn't. It never has been, of course. Yeah. And I've never been back since, but I absolutely loved being there. I loved the atmosphere of the place. And I can see why people don't like it.
Yeah.
If you're more thespian and stuff like that, I can see that maybe LA is just a bit too clinical for you. And
too flash,
but
too glitzy.
Yeah, maybe. And I loved it. But one of the things I realized I've missed out on is I was never someone who did the party scene.
Right.
I didn't always go to rap parties of the stuff I'd even been in.
Okay.
Partly because of my conditions and not being able to get enough sleep, or being over stimulated by stuff, or just not having the energy to do it. But I feel like I've missed out on a lot of natural networking opportunities that come with being part of that scene. And I know actors who are part of that scene who I know have benefited from it, and I'm not jealous of them. I'm like the people that I feel like I came up in this business with, people like Victoria Broom, I think are brilliant. I think she's just absolutely brilliant, and I'm so pleased that her career has had this sort of upward trajectory recently, and she's done all these really interesting things. I'm so excited for her. And if I'm jealous of the ability to enjoy it all more.
Right.
Not the opportunities and not the jobs and things like that people think that we all scratch each other's eyes out over. There's a lot more reassurance and looking after each other than people really think there are. People really think happens. I was always the kind of person that I would be trolling all the casting sites every single day for hours, and if I found things that weren't necessarily right for me but were right for my friends, I would direct them to those castings. Or whenever I was casting things myself, sometimes I'd cast things for other people because they knew that I had a really solid network of actors that I worked with. And I loved being able to give those opportunities to people. And I know that I've missed out on some of those opportunities that if I'd not told them, they wouldn't have been at the audition, and they got it instead of me. I don't really care about that side of things, because I've always thought that, your reputation precedes you. And if you're someone who's looking out for other people and they look out for you, then it kind of all balances out in the end.
You have to hope that they will look out for you, though, because some people do
Some people don't. There's no point becoming the bad guy and the jaded person, cynical one, just because of a handful of people who will always be assholes.
That's true.
The majority of people are not like that, and the majority of people I've worked with have not been like that. And I really hate that the handful of people that have been like that are the ones that seem to be able to have such ease in walking over people and lining their own pockets and stuff like that. That is the world. I thought that was the industry for such a long time, because I went from college to uni to the industry and nothing really in between. I'd be a waitress and stuff like that to pay the bills. But I never engaged in other industries. When I became a chef for a while and moved all of that aside, I realized that this toxicity is everywhere. It doesn't matter where you work or what you do, it's there. So you might as well be the good guy.
Yeah.
And I know I'd rather finish last as the good guy
Absolutely.
than finish bad guy.
Good girl. Good girl.
That sounds like such moralistic bull.
No,
But
no,
I genuinely feel that way.
But no, I've known you for a long time, and you are that person. You know, you've cast me in several things, and I've never felt that you were scratching my back for me to scratch yours. You know, you seem to be you do stuff because it's the right thing to do, and if there are more people like that.
This is the thing as well. Like I put the project ahead of everyone else. You know, if I think that I know someone who's perfect for this part or this job, whatever it may be, then I will always suggest them for it. And I will always try and make that connection between those two people who might not know each other.
Yeah.
And that has definitely spilled over with the writing and the reporting. So now I've been getting scripts in from people that I've reported on. And occasionally I know someone who's either looking for that or could at least help you find someone who's looking for that.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine, Matt, he sent me a theatre script, and I'm connecting him with someone who's just set up their own theatre company.
Cool.
And I think the two of them could. I think what he's written and what she's trying to do could match each other. I don't promise things to people because that just upsets and dangling the carrot kind of thing. But I always say to them, I will always try, and I'll make the connection, but it's really up to you guys to do the work. And
you
to
can
talk
lead
to each
a
other.
horse to water.
Yeah, exactly. And I love doing that. I really love doing that.
Cool, excellent.
I think it's what people ultimately dream of. I think it's what we want. I think we want someone to read our work or see our show reels and go, oh, but you'll be perfect for that. And then that person who makes the decision as to whether or not you are the director or casting director or whatever, they see it too. And I love it when things work out that way.
This is what helps the industry, isn't it? I mean, someone might be making a film and you know the perfect person for that thing. Whether or not you decide to introduce that actor to that director could mean the difference of that film being a success or not. It's the chain. Is it like the butterfly effect? Is that?
Yeah.
So,
but have you ever been on a set where the wrong person's in the wrong job? You know, regardless of what that.
Oh yes.
Do you agree with me that affects the atmosphere on set massively?
100%.
And as an actor, we're really sensitive to those atmospheres, and they can really impact our ability to perform or to be completely open.
100%.
So if you cast it and you crew a project the right way, where everyone's in the right job and everybody's happy with each other, and we all understand, I think one of the things that doesn't happen often enough, in my opinion, and I know why, and I don't really want to get into the ins and outs of why, because it's a big, long argument, but I think there should be more transparency in pay. I'm not saying everyone necessarily be paid exactly the same, although I do like the Family Fortuna method. I do think there should be transparency so that people don't feel like they may be getting less than their worth and the other person's being paid more just because they demanded it. You know, if you have a good atmosphere on set, then whatever you're making is going to be so much easier to make.
Absolutely. There have been times when I've been doing projects and I've enjoyed it so much, and they try to pay me my expenses, but knowing that project is on a shoestring budget, I would rather that 10 quid or 50 quid even goes towards that budget, and then they can deal with my expenses at a later date, or just not bother. You know, that's just my.
I think that's very generous, but and I know that you're generous that way, and I know that you've taken that position in the past. But the problem is that it perpetuates this idea of
actors working for nothing.
Of actors working for nothing, of actors not being worth it. I actually think, and I've thought about this a lot recently, I think that the way expenses should be handled is that they should be paid up front, because ultimately then the actor's never out of pocket. I think that all actors should have a kind of PayPal account or an equivalent, and that any agreed expenses should go in at the beginning of the project, so that the actor doesn't get to the end of it having done all this work and spent all this money worrying if they're ever going to get it back, because they can't afford to eat. If you can't afford to eat because you spent all this money on petrol that they've promised you and then you don't get it, which happens, I think expenses should be up front. And then I think that a deferred fee should always be signed on. Always.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I did a film project one time. I won't go into too much detail, but the actress had to fly down from another part of the country, from Scotland down to London. And they'd agreed that she'd get her expenses back. But when the time came, the person in charge he tried to persuade her to take a percentage of her expenses instead of, So, but that project...
It's unfair to put an actor or anyone in that position. And, how many times have we come across a situation where the actors are expected to do it for nothing because, we love what we do so much. And then the crew are all being paid.
Yes, yeah.
That's infuriating. That's utterly wrong.
Absolutely.
So, I'm a member of that Stop Working for Free group on Facebook and stuff like that. And I've got to a point now where, and I say this as a working class filmmaker who never had money to do stuff. If I worked with people for free, they were good friends who wanted to do it, who, had their own reasons for wanting to do it. I tried not to post sort of free casting calls online and stuff like that. And not just because of the backlash, but because I found it humiliating, embarrassing to have to ask people to, people I don't know free. That's where there's kind of an issue with that. So I avoided that as much as I could. But now that I'm older and I'm wiser and I look back on the whole thing, I think that if you are a filmmaker, then you need to work damn hard at getting your project funded. If you can't get it funded, then move on and make something else and get that funded. Stop just going, my idea is wonderful. If other people don't think so, then maybe there's a reason,
Absolutely.
Or invest in it yourself, work hard, live with your mum and dad, do a full-time job, do an extra job at the weekend, save all that money and then pay people. Because at the end of the day, if you've paid everyone, then you own that project at the end of it. And any money that comes from it can legitimately all go back in your pocket.
To the next one.
You're the only one taking the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my original point was that if I decide, I'd rather you use that money towards, what you need to use it towards rather than give it to me, that should be down to the actor to make that decision. The producers, the director, whoever's in charge of, the film, whether it be a low budget indie film or a short film for something else, a student film, they should assume that the actor's going to want to be paid. They shouldn't assume that the actor's willing to work for nothing. If the actor decides off their own back, actually, I know you're struggling with this, so I'm happy to forego that, or you can give it to me at a later date when you've bought that piece of equipment that you really need for that scene or whatever. That's down to the actor, I think.
Yeah.
But the production, whoever's in charge of the production, should assume that the actor is going to want to be paid, because
absolutely,
because you don't know what's going to happen from day to day.
And this is the thing, if you are an established actor and you're getting paid regularly and decently for other things you've done, then I if I was financially successful in my own eyes, and I had the time and the money and the resources to not have to be paid for everything, I would be quite willing and happy to do student films and short films for other filmmakers for nothing, because I can see how some actors budget for that. Do you know what I mean? Like they'll do a big advert or something and they'll go, right, that means that I can afford to do X many projects.
Yeah, some passion projects.
Passion projects, exactly. Maybe even their own projects and stuff like that. And I think that's a really positive way for an actor to sort of budget and think ahead. But at the same time, I agree with you. You know, there should never be the expectation of working for free. And another reason why you should be paying your expenses up front is because you're working from a budget and you know what that is right now. And then quite often someone might be careless with that budget partway through and make a decision that means that those expenses are no longer there. And that's unacceptable.
Right.
Unacceptable. So pay people up front. And then, you know, then if the budget isn't there to make that error, then they won't be there to make that error.
Gemma has spoken.
I want people to get paid. I want people to be respectful for the work that they do.
You're absolutely right.
We kind of fell into a funny generation. You know, my parents and their parents, they didn't do apprenticeships and things like that for nothing.
Yeah.
They would never have dreamed of working a day in their lives for no pay.
Yeah.
It's out of the question. It wouldn't even enter their minds. Then our generation comes along. Well, you've got to build a portfolio. You've got to build up a company. You've got to do all these other things, and that makes perfect sense to us because, you know, maybe our parents aren't all coming from a creative industry. You know, I was the first in my family to do this professionally. And that made perfect sense to me. Why would anyone take me on if I haven't got a show reel to prove what I can do? How am I going to get a show reel? Well, the only thing I can do, because I have no experience, is to do student films, which is why you should do these things at uni, like I was deterred from, because that's when you can afford to do all this stuff for nothing. Yeah. And you can throw a hat into as many rings as possible, and you can contact every filmmaker in your university if you want to and go, I want to be in your thing, even if it's a small part or one line. I need stuff for my show reel. So that by the time you've graduated, you've actually built your repertoire of goods.
And you get straight out there.
So actually the advice I was given wasn't just thoughtless, it was completely wrong. Completely wrong.
They hijacked your career, Jen. They saw the potential and they were jealous.
No, I just should have known my own mind more. I knew better, and my gut told me to ignore them as well. I should have myself.
Would they have punished you if you did ignore them?
No, they would never have known. Because this is the thing, like departments were in completely different places, and some of the stuff that I was applying for was like online, so completely different film courses in different universities all over London.
Right.
You know, they would never have known, but I would have got the experience. I would have got the chance to build up my confidence, and I would have been able to deliver a show reel within a month of graduating from university. You know, I was actually very proactive at that age. I had the energy and I wanted to use it, which is why I went straight into doing the cabaret and the play. You know, I was exhausting myself. Yeah. And when I did a feature film as well, that unfortunately didn't see the light of day because my 2 camera crew let me down. They didn't get coverage that I needed on 2 scenes, which meant I couldn't cut it together to make sense. Right. And I couldn't get actors back because 2 of them had changed their look so dramatically that there was no chance of it working out. Right. So on a technicality, I couldn't finish my feature film, and I'd invested $5,000 of my own money. I'd paid people. I hadn't asked for freebies.
Yeah.
I had one actor who refused any of the money that I offered him, like you have done in the past, and I, you know, very grateful to him for doing that. He was very kind, and I feel absolutely awful that I couldn't get the film out and distributed for everyone's sakes. Because I had trusted someone who I'd paid to do a job and they didn't do it. Yeah. So like that whole time was absolutely exhausting. And it kind of put me for a while.
Well, I bet. I mean, you one thing I've learned from life is never to rely on other people. If you can do it yourself, do it yourself. If you can't do it yourself, go with the person who's doing it and make sure that they do it. It's a horrible way to be, but you know, it's frustrating, isn't it? You just, you know, people just.
But I had to get the whole thing filmed because that was the only time that everyone would do it at the same time. And you know, I was paying for a B&B for everyone, and you know, no one was out of pocket on my film. I wasn't prepared to let that be the case, and you know, I was feeding everybody properly, and I was doing all of this myself. I was going home, making all the sandwiches for the next day, and literally I was doing everything myself. And looking back on it, I should have just asked someone for help. Yeah.
have someone else do the sandwiches, and then you go out with the camera crew to make sure that they film the bit that you need to film.
Yeah, I was just spread too thin.
like peanut butter on your sandwiches.
Huge learning curve, though. I'll never make that mistake again.
Well, this is the thing, you've learnt, you have learnt from it, and if you hadn't made that mistake, it might come at a later time when it's more critical. You might be paid to do a corporate film, and you go out with this camera crew, and they don't do the bit that you wanted them to do, and that ends up, it doesn't make them look bad; it makes you look bad as the director. So and then you as a reputation.
I had actually hired a director for that. I wasn't directing it because I knew that was one thing too many. I got a guy called Darren Gordon, and he was very good. I have nothing but good things to say about him. But yeah, just a huge learning curve. And like I said, there's things that I will obviously never do again. Mistakes I will never make again. But it's made me realise that if I ever do make a feature film of my own again, that I need to spend more time shooting it at the very least. 2 weeks just isn't. It's too much. It's too stressful.
Mm-hmm. And make sure your actors know not to change their look for a month after the shoot, just in case.
Well, they didn't. It wasn't. I knew that was a thing. They'd given me all the information, and I made my judgments based on the information they gave me. So that it was in no way their fault. It was all on me.
Well, it was all on the camera people who didn't do what you asked them to do, really.
Yeah, there is an element of that. But ultimately, I double checked.
Right. Wow.
But I was just trying to do too many things all at once. And that's ultimately what I've taken away from it. Don't try and do too many things at once.
Exactly.
And rectify that. With my short film that I did with Nigel and Eddie, it was a joy. It was just easy. Yeah. It was lovely. It's a really nice thing to do.
Well, there you go then. So you've learnt your lesson, and you've already put it into practice, and you're away.